looking at clips of preparations outside the National Museum shot earlier today. The Department of Public Works and Highways have started to construct the mock-up stage for President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s inauguration on June 30.
Marcos Jr. is choosing to take his oath in the historic legislative building located at the center of Manila. Not only is the structure the birthplace of the Commonwealth Republic, it also once served as the workplace of his father back when he was Senate President. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampa. You're watching The Big Story. Let's start by taking a look at preparations being made at the National Museum after it was announced that the historic landmark will serve as venue for the incoming president's inauguration.
The museum beat other options for venues. One historian says Marcos Jr. might just be simply following tradition. Marlene Alcaide with The Big Story.
From repainting to the construction of a mock-up stage, work is already underway at the National Museum in Manila, the venue of the June 30 inauguration of incoming President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. In the Public Works Department's mock setup, the stage is expected to reach P. Burgos with bleachers for VIPs on both sides of the stage. But these plans have yet to be finalized.
We are already on the stress out point to finish the work ahead.
Officials target to finish the setup by June 20 before putting embellishments. The Manila Police District is also working on security measures to make sure the event goes smoothly. Recall that the Carino Grandstand and Fort Santiago were also being considered as options for the inauguration. But Marcos camp opted to forgo using the grandstand so as not to affect its COVID facility. Presidential Management Staff Secretary-designate Zenaida Angping also said that the National Museum fits the requirements. The place is also of historical significance. The Philippine Commonwealth was proclaimed here back in 1935 when it was still called the National Assembly Building. It was destroyed during World War II but was reconstructed in the 50s.
It used to be the Congress. That used to be the legislative building. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to use the National Museum. I think he was basically following tradition.
His father, the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr., also worked in the building as Senate President from 1963 to 1965, back when it was still the legislative building. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
Mr. Marcos would have wanted the historic grandstand as venue for his inauguration. This was where his father, the late dictator Marcos Sr., took his oath in 1965 and then again in 1969. But the venue is currently being used as quarantine facilities for COVID-19 patients. Formerly called the Independence Grandstand, it has been the traditional venue for inaugurations. But the National Museum is no less historic. In 1935, Commonwealth President Manuel Quezon was inaugurated here. Jose P. Laurel also took oath here as the president of the Japanese-sponsored republic in 1944. Succeeding presidents also took their oaths as president in other places. After the snap elections in 1986, a beleaguered Marcos Sr. took his in Malacanang, while Corazon Aquino held hers at the Club Filipino in San Juan. Joseph Estrada, meanwhile, chose Barasoin Church in Malolos, Bulacan in 1998. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo held the ceremony in two venues in 2004, at the Carino Grandstand in Manila and then in Cebu to express gratitude to the Cebuano vote that got her the top seat. The last two presidents, the late Noynoy Aquino and outgoing President Rodrigo Duterte, held their inaugurations at the Carino Grandstand and Malacanang, respectively. Meanwhile, after 6 years in public service, the office of Vice President Leni Robredo is now ready for their transfer of power. Gretchen, what's the next for Vice President Leni Robredo's camp?
Robbie, outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo is yet to meet with incoming Vice President Sara Duterte's team for a proper turnover. But according to Robredo's camp, their work has just started as they are set to launch what they claim will be the biggest volunteer network in the country. Ryan Ang with the story.
With less than a month before the end of Vice President Leni Robredo's term, her team has started packing up and preparing for the transition into the next administration. OBP spokesman Barry Gutierrez said there will be a meeting between the transition team of Robredo and incoming VP Sara Duterte this week.
Magkakaroon siguro ng presentation, hindi ko alam kung ipapaalam na nila at this point kung ano yung desisyon nila, kung tutuloy o hindi. Pero nasa sa kanila yon.
Robredo's daughter, Dr. Tricia, said they are at peace knowing that they did everything they could in the recently concluded elections.
Hindi pa rin naman kami nawawalan ng loob kasi there are other ways to help and we look forward to tapping the human resources that we have now.
Meanwhile, the OVP's Bayanihan e-Consulta served for the last time on Tuesday. The program has helped more than 58,000 patients during the pandemic. Aubrey, one of the beneficiaries, thanked the OVP for providing oxygen for her mom when she tested positive for COVID-19.
Malungkot kasi madami siyang natulungan na ganun ka-efficient yung serbisyong nabigay nila. Sana yun yung naging maging model ng say ng LGU natin or ng iba pang national agencies natin.
Nakaka-proud and at the same time, sobrang grateful ko rin to have been a part of this initiative.
Gutierrez meanwhile said the program might also be included in the non-government organization they will be launching on July 1.
Kung interesado kayong tumulong, kung interesado pa rin kayong maging bahagi ng initiatives ni VP Lenny, sisikapin nating gawan ng espasyo dito sa Angat Buhay NGO. Madami dun sa mga approaches at mga initiatives na nasimulan sa ilalim ng Angat Buhay program sa OVP, sisikapin nating ipagpatuloy.
Once her term ends, Robredo will also be stepping down as the chairman of the Liberal Party. For News 5, Ryan Ang, We Are One News.
These are the other big stories tonight. Looser restrictions. Some health experts are backing calls to lift the public health emergency in the country as infections remain low despite the cases of the more transmissible Omicron subvariant. Formerly executives Dargani Mohit and Lin Con Ong now run free after Senate President Tito Soto signed their separate release orders. And a legal victory for Hollywood actor Johnny Depp after a U.S. jury found that ex-wife Amber Heard was liable for defamation. These big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. With the Philippines slowly recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, an infectious disease expert and a presidential advisor have backed the lifting of the state of public health emergency in the country.
But they still want to hold off on the possibility of going maskless. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to this story.
More than 2 years since the country was put on lockdown because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and infectious diseases experts say it's time to lift the state of emergency in the country.
If you compare 2020, 2021, and 2022, napakalaking difference na. Ang mga kaso natin ngayon has been stabilized to less than 200, no?
Lifting the state of emergency would mean further loosening up of travel and capacity restrictions. In addition, this would also mean COVID vaccines would then be available commercially for those who want or need. Presidential advisor for entrepreneur Joey Concepcion points out that the country has already gone back to pre-pandemic times.
By declaring that the Philippines is not in a health state of emergency, gives greater confidence that we have succeeded as a nation to really control this virus.
Concepcion also urges the resumption of face-to-face classes, as this will help revive small businesses. But both Solante and Concepcion agree that health protocols should continue. Face masks could still be mandatory indoors, but optional for outdoors. There's been an uptick of COVID cases in the past month, although daily average remains less than 200, and hospitalization remains at a safe level. Because of this, Solante is confident that the wall of immunity will hold.
Siguro, we have to treat this as something na endemic in a way na maluwagan na natin in terms of yung economic activities.
Vaccine and booster rollout have been sluggish lately, and there are concerns over waning vaccine immunity. That is why Solante and Concepcion urges the public to still get the jab, even after we emerge from the COVID emergency. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
What does the health department think about lifting the state of public health emergency in the country? That big question and more with Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere. Yusek, welcome po once again to The Big Story.
Good evening, sir, at magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat.
Ma'am, diretso na po tayo sa tanong. What does the DOH think about this proposal?
Well, first, let us try to contextualize. No? When we talk about public health emergency, it's the WHO which have declared this. What we have here in the country is a state of calamity under the proclamation coming from the Office of the President. The latest proclamation that was issued will expire by September of this year. So that's the time when the President or the advisors would then recommend to the Office of the President if we still need to extend. One of the things that we are looking at right now, although we are seeing that there is this plateauing of cases, we need to consider also the entry of these new subvariants of Omicron. Plus, we need to also consider that the population's booster coverage is still very low. And based from our projections, we will have a peak of cases towards the end of July and maybe early August if this continues on, that a small population or coverage for the population for boosters, meaning waning immunity, plus the subvariants will have this characteristic of evading immunity. So that would be one of the things that we need to consider. Another most important thing would be the operational implications if we lift the state of calamity. Because herein lies, and we rely on this, that with this declaration of state of calamity, we can use our vaccines under EUA and also the other drugs that we use for COVID-19. Also for the procurement of these different commodities that we have right now, we base it on the state of calamity proclamation and the different policies attached to that. So there are operational implications as well. So this is being discussed right now, and maybe we can be able to recommend once the trend of cases would stabilize and we can really see the true picture.
Before the stabilization, you mentioned a peak, an anticipated peak in July. What will that look like? And particularly, what will that look like if interest and acceptance and access and willingness to get booster shots does not actually go up?
Yes, actually, that is part of the scientific assumptions that were provided for in these projections, wherein towards the end of July or early August, if there is still waning immunity, meaning that we will maintain this very slow pace of booster shots here in the country, we will see around 7,000 plus cases, average daily cases per day, just in NCR. And we will also see a rise in hospitalizations, around 4,000 plus hospital occupancy. When you compare that to the Delta situation, we only had about 4,300 occupancy in our hospitals then. So it would be higher than the Delta experience.
Okay, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, maraming salamat po. Now, here's one problem we have not shaken off yet, food supply, and it's bound to get worse as neighbors Thailand and Vietnam plan to raise the prices of rice exports. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to this story.
Thailand and Vietnam are reportedly in talks to raise the prices of rice, which means trouble for the Philippines. Thailand is the world's #2 rice exporter and Vietnam is third. Together, they're the biggest source of imports for the country. The issue is that their farmers have been struggling under higher production costs, just like here. Fertilizer costs, for instance, have tripled.
Dati po mga 1,000, ngayon po ay humigit po lang mga 3,000 isang bag. Farmers are now cutting back on their fertilizer use. It will have an impact on the harvest.
The group was warned weeks ago that we're facing a shortage in local rice supply, and that was before Thailand and Vietnam started talking.
We're facing a drop in palay production of about 1.1 million metric tons. That would represent roughly about 15 days supply.
This comes on top of other food supply shortages globally, worsened by the ongoing war in Ukraine. Fast food chains like McDonald's are still unable to sell large-sized French fries due to a potato shortage. Restaurant chain Mary Grace Cafe ran out of its famous ensaimadas due to raw material issues. And in recent days, Mang Inasal and Angel's Burger also had to limit certain menu items.
So we have to increase our prices, but that can drive down sales as well. So it's a balance of so many new things, and that balance point shifts every day.
Teng says it's not just global shipping issues. The local supply chain is also problematic.
Interestingly, vegetable prices in China went up by 24%. And yet in Benguet, 2 days ago, people were calling me that they're about to throw away carrots. We have the supply, but sometimes it's just not getting to the market at the right time.
The Agriculture Department has warned of global food crisis, which could be felt later this year. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
For the big story in sports, it's a fresh start for Gilas Pilipinas after naming Nenad Vucinic as the new head coach for the third window of the FIBA World Cup Asian qualifiers. The coaching change comes just a week after Chot Reyes and Gilas failed to capture a 14th straight gold medal in the 31st Southeast Asian Games following their loss to Indonesia. Vucinic previously coached the New Zealand national team and has been part of the Gilas coaching staff since February. First stop for the Serbian Kiwi mentor will be on June 30 as Gilas visits New Zealand, followed by a game versus India on July 3. Time for another quick break. More of the big stories when we return.
watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. With the upper chamber adjourning for its last session, Senate President Tito Sotto signed the release orders for Pharmaly executives Mohit Targani and Lincoln Ong.
This as the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee also failed to secure enough votes to bring the case to plenary. Mon Gualvez with this report.
After months of detention, Pharmaly executives Mohit Targani and Lincoln Ong are now released.
Sir, anong plano nyo lang po ngayon na nakalaya na kayo?
Sir, any plans?
Any word, sir? Any word?
The two were jailed after refusing to release Pharmaly's financial documents at the height of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee's probe on the alleged 10 billion pesos worth of medical supplies purchased by the government.
I don't think that they have regretted one bit na nakulong sila. Yung paninindigan nila is intact, their dignity is intact, and for us, that is what's important.
In the Blue Ribbon's draft report, it was recommended to file plunder and graft charges against the DBM Procurement Service, Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, and President Rodrigo Duterte. Only 9 senators signed the committee report on the case, short of 2 votes to elevate the case to plenary. 11 did not, including Senator Miguel Zubiri, poised to be the incoming Senate President. He said he could have signed it if the President's name were not in the list.
I only agree that all the Pharmaly executives should be, and of course, yung sa PSDBM. But anyone else, others are all circumstantial hearsay, evidence.
This is why Senator Dick Gordon, who led the investigation, said the case is far from closed.
At nakita na talagang gumawa ng katiwalian na napakalaki. At kilalang-kilala ng kampanya, sinasabi sa akin lahat ng tao yan. Pero ngayon, hindi natin pipirmahan bilang senador. Walang closure. Ito na naman tayo. Kasi sinasabi, imbestiga, pero wala nangyayari.
Senator Risa Ontiveros says they did not coerce any witness and that she plans to refile the investigation in the incoming 19th Congress. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
It's a win for Johnny.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has...
After a 6-week trial, a Virginia jury has ruled that the actress Amber Heard defamed ex-husband Johnny Depp in a newspaper opinion piece. The verdict was announced on Thursday, which awarded Depp $15 million in damages, but was reduced to $10.3 million due to state limits. The panel also awarded the actress $2 million in compensatory damages. Lawyer for Depp attorney Camille Vasquez thanked the jury for their, quote, careful deliberation of the case.
Today's verdict confirms what we have said from the beginning, that the claims against Johnny Depp are defamatory and unsupported by any evidence.
Depp, who was in Britain, took to social media to thank the people who supported him. He ended his statement by saying that a new chapter has finally begun. Heard on an Instagram post said that she was disappointed and heartbroken over the verdict. The two met back in 2011 and married in 2015. Their divorce was finalized 2 years later. In 2018, Heard wrote an opinion piece where she claimed that Depp domestically abused her, prompting the actor to sue her for defamation. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Step aside, Pikachu. It looks like Pokemon fans in the Philippines have a new favorite Pokemon.
The trailer for the new Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is now out and introduced 2 new professors and 3 monsters. One new character already captured a lot of people's attention, a little piggy called Lechonk. The Pokemon name Lechonk is an obvious wordplay from lechon and the word chonk. For us Filipinos, the word lechon comes as no surprise, especially during celebrations.
According to the Pokemon website, Lechonk has a great sense of smell, and when attacked by an opponent and startled, it will charge forward and panic. From the look of the name, it's no surprise Filipinos and other Pokemon fans are already in love with the new character.
Nung isang araw lang, kinukwento ko sa'yo yung mga lechon yung mga baboy na narinig ko sa La Loma, umiiyak na 4 a.m. Ngayon, buti naman sa Pokemon na sila. Oo. Yeah, but one trivia dun sa lechonk is yung taba daw niya is made out of muscle, kakahanap ng pagkain. Naglaro ka ba ng Pokemon?
Hindi maganda ako hindi, pero marami akong kilala who are into that, di ba?
Batch ko yun eh. Ano ba ng batch mo?
Hindi. Noong panahon pa namin, meron na. Meron
Tamagotchi.
na. Natatanda mo, iba lang yun na naalala
Tamagotchi?
mo. Mga pamangking ko na yun.
Okay, let's wrap up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal, Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And get vaccinated, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.